Welcome to the Intrinsic First Leadership Podcast. I'm Aaron Robbins with Intrinsic First. Thanks for joining us on this journey. Be sure to stick around to the end for some debatably funny jokes that will hopefully leave you with a smile. And don't forget to like and subscribe to stay up to date on our latest episodes. We're here to support you, and we'd love to hear from you. So drop us a comment below or reach out to us directly at info@intrinsicfirst.com. Ready to dive into the world of leadership? Let's get started. So we're here today to talk to you about values. We just finished last week's podcast on disposition, and despite some audio-visual, some video issues that we had with the cameras overheating and turning off, I'd say it was a pretty good one, and it kind of led us into the topic of values, where we were giving an example of a supervisor talking with an employee, and if they go off their disposition where they're introverted and risk averse, then just disposition alone, they're probably not going to provide the type of leadership behaviors that might be needed to provide compassion and empathy, to really take time to think and understand where they're coming from and help the employee, because it's not aligned with their disposition. But of course, we know that that's not the whole story, right? There's another aspect of our personality, which is not just disposition, but our values. So let's jump into that.
Okay, and I think the way we should start is to begin to think about the origins of the intention, or the origin of what is driving you at that particular moment in time. And I said it could be either based on instinct or based on disposition. Really, what we're talking about is the affect, the one or things that people feel, as a result of it, it's unconscious, and it has to be made conscious if you want to change it. And of course, we're selling change here. We're selling flexibility. We're selling a wide variety of behaviors. And of course, the more behaviors you have, or the wider the behaviors you have, the more you're going to be able to meet what the environment is demanding of you in a particular situation. But not so. Then, if we just look at values, we realize that it's more rational than it is not irrational, but irrational. And as a result of it, it passes through a whole appraisal process. You begin to appraise, well, what do I want to do that, and how logical would that be, and is that in line with what I believe, and so forth. So let's talk about the definition of a value. For me, one value is it's an enduring belief that a particular end, outcome, or means, ways to get that outcome, are more individually or socially preferable than another alternative or another end or mean. An enduring belief, that's important. So really, it requires a sort of leap of faith, ultimately, where it might be proof-based, or we might empirically be able to establish it. But in generally, what we're talking about is a belief. When push comes to shove, this is what I believe, and I'm not sure exactly how we could defend it one way or the other. An enduring belief that a particular end, outcome, something you want. I want to be rich. That's a personal income outcome, or a particular end or mean, a way of getting that outcome, is more individually preferable than a particular end, another end or mean. So that means that you are weighing it against alternatives. And again, that's all what I mean by the appraisal process. You're thinking about it, you're talking about it, and it's part of what you have deliberated or experienced and believe is right. Does that make sense? Now, it's not just a value of right or wrong, although you could value things that no one else values within your own self. So the first thing I want you to hear is values are developed or chosen. Now, so you could have a developed value, or I could have a what I would call personal value, or a value which it's something I've experienced, or it is something I've just adopted. So we grow up with values that we learn from our parents, from the institutions we belong, like the schools and so forth. And we get these ideas about what is good or best or better or not good, not best, or something to be avoided. So it is ultimately a judgment, and it's an appraisal. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I think so. We can get more into the definitions, program versus develop. I think maybe we talk about some examples.
I was going to put one in the hopper.
Go for it.
And then we'll move that out to a value having to do with leading. Okay, but let's just start with an enduring belief that a particular end or mean is more socially or individually preferable. And if let's say there are, and not only are there an ends and means, but they are in some ways, these ends and means are, and as I said, can be developed, or it could be adopted through your background or your education and so forth. But there are ends and means that have to be deliberated in order for them to be defined, or in order for them to be held. Okay, and of course it's where we get into trouble when we start talking about politics, as an example, or things that are socially. Politics, religion, and sex
we're not supposed to talk about any of those, right?
No, we're not supposed to. That's right. We're not. We're just supposed to have them.
Yeah, right. Not at work. This is a recipe.
Don't you say it. Don't say it. Don't say it. It's good. If they're developed, that means they've gone through some trials, some experience with the end or mean. And these ends or mean can be personal, or they can be social or other oriented. So a personal outcome or a personal means or end for me is I want to be rich. That's personal. I hold it for me. I don't hold it for anybody else. And it's an end. I can determine when I'm rich or not. So I want to be rich would be a personal end. I could have a personal means, which is I'm going to do it by my own efforts. I'm going to do it by my own efforts. Or I could have a social end. I want a world at peace. This would be an example of it. And of course, I might do that personally. I might do that. Or I want a good environment. I want a pure environment, a well-kept environment. A healthy environment, and I'm going to do it through an organization that I belong to, or support a group of people, or a law that would allow me to help it be brought to the attention of other people. So I can have personal ends, and I can have personal means. I can have personal social ends and social means. And so those begin I'm going to give you some examples. Here's one. I want to be healthy. And one of my health, one of the ways of being healthy is I'm not going to smoke. Okay? So that's a personal end. I want to be healthy. And I'm going to do it by personal means. I'm not going to smoke. Now the question would be, well, do you believe that there should be a law passed that prevents anyone from smoking in public government or public buildings. Now, that'd be interesting, because as we start to look at that, we can have conversations with other people who would disagree with that, and we would then be able to understand the quality or the purposes of their values by understanding what they would do to make those values come into being. So if I said to you, Jimmy, do you believe that we should pass a law preventing people to smoke in public buildings, in all government public buildings?
Oh, I would say yes.
You would say yes to that?
Yes.
So now...
That's terrible.
I know.
You're infringing on my freedoms.
Oh, yes. Oh, as a matter of fact, do you believe that anyone should be able to buy an automatic weapon that shoots up
Oh, man, you're going there.
Yeah,
well, I
we're
was
going
just
on to it.
merely
We're
trying
going
to
into
show
it.
you that there are, we live by our values, or we act on values that we either do support or not support, and don't know where they came from. I mean, when I really looked at the way I learned my values, I found that I had to have some experience with it. So sometimes, if do you believe that in your woman's right to have an abortion, if it was threatening their livelihood or their life or the baby's life. And so what we're beginning to look at is what are the beliefs I carry, and how did I get those beliefs, and where did they come from, and how dear are they?
So do you think? I think we all go through this. We're like we're grown up in a certain religion, and that's kind of those are the values that are, taught to us. So we live our life that way at an early stage, and maybe at some point, whether it's adolescence or young adulthood, where we start to question: is this the right religion for me? I mean, do we find that happens at a certain age? Is when you, some people don't have that. They just
well.
stay
First
with
of
it.
all, the first real values begin to develop around the capacity to think, to appraise, to actually cognitively understand what the philosophical ideas are behind it. If I was to look at how people acquire them, there's a theory by a guy by the name of Lawrence Kohlberg, and Kohlberg said that he began looking at when do values begin to develop, and how do they? Is there some progression to some of those things? And the answers were yes. So let me give you an example. I'll give you an example of what Kohlberg did, and he began to ask kids children by the age of 6, and then he went out all the way out to 35, and got to see where it goes. And the question was this: a man's wife is dying of a very rare disease, and as a result of it, he's got to get the medicine in order to keep her alive. So he goes to the one person he knows, the druggist or the person who's selling the drugs, and asks him or her could he buy X number of pills to keep the wife alive, and the pharmacist says, yes, you can. It's $500 for X number of pills. And the man says, well, I don't have $500. He said, could I work it off with you? No, said the druggist. And he said, well, could I take a loan on it? No. Well, could I pay for it partially? It's too much for me to make a long story short. The druggist says only one thing: $500 for those pills, or you can't have it. And when the druggist was not watching what he was doing, he went up into the back room, and the man took the vial of pills, left what money he had, which was not much, and ran out of the store with it to give his wife. Kohlberg said to the 6-year-olds, was he wrong? Was he wrong? And the children, most of the children at that age and in that culture, and by the way, this is done over across a number of cultures across the world, and the answer for most of the 6-year-olds was, if he gets spanked or if he gets punished, he was wrong. So the judgment of the infraction was based on the consequences it would have for the person. And of course, they didn't want to be spanked, or the pain would not be a good idea. So the first place where sort of the moral process begins to emerge is where what's the implications for the person who did it. Yeah. And then as he went to begin to ask older children at 10, what was it? And of course, at this point, kids really don't think or weigh things particularly well quite yet. They're in the precognitive stage, and they asked the same of the 10-year-olds, and the 10-year-olds said, "What does his friend say?" And if his friend says it's wrong, then it's. And so that was the second level that he found that was a development. And then the next level was, what did the law say? And then the next level was, to what extent did this fit with the person's own moral, cognitive, and experience with it. So there were a series of sort of moral levels that were developed over time. And really, what he had to say was that there is a top level which had to do with what would the fundamental ideas about life, and to what extent they had thought through the larger questions, so they could put it in priorities to what they thought was right or wrong at a given point. Now, the reason why that's important is that there is a series of choices people make when not thinking through them without any information about it, that often they find themselves doing based upon their age level and development experience with life and so forth and so on. But the general American population, no matter what age, tended to go with, what does the law say? And if the law says it's wrong, and that's a stale. See, interestingly enough, there was no examination of what was possible or what could be would be fair, and weighing that. So possession is, why is possession the true sole question of whether that's right or wrong?
So for that group of, we're talking like young adult or young kids, right? At that age, I believe, because social justice is like a big thing, right? Is it fair? This concept of fairness we call it a value, but that's usually identified at that age, like what's fair, what's not.
Well, let's be talking about fair for just a minute.
Sure.
What do you mean by fair?
So that for every individual, that's a question they define. Like, so the one that I see at 10, 11-year-olds is, they're playing a game with their friends, and then the friends start changing the rules. That's not fair.
Stop right there.
All right.
Most children before the age of cognition, and most kids don't.
What's the age?
Yeah, I was going to say,
what's the age of cognition?
Cognition is between 10 and 12.
Yeah.
Okay. Middle school.
They begin to
living that right now.
Yeah, well, they can tell the time. I mean, essentially, precognition is, I can't even. If you tell, are we there yet?
Right. Is this
5 minutes there? Are we there?
Right.
Is it concrete or abstract? Right. Prior to that, they don't really have. It's hard. Abstract thinking is very difficult for them.
That's right.
I would argue, to take another step there, is like the concept of team. I would argue at anything less than 10 is a difficult concept for children. Mm-hmm. They're very ego, and that's.
So what's going to happen to me?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's that first prior. So the interesting thing is that the most primary sense of fairness, which is what I want to come back to, is the issue of reciprocity. If I get it, you get it.
Oh, okay.
If I don't get it, you don't get it.
Okay.
If you do that to me, I'm going to do that. I have the right to do. So for an eye, that kind of that kind of thinking.
Yeah.
Well,
No, that's exactly. I see that right now. My football team. I never
So
put
that's
those
where the
together.
unfair piece for a kid,
Sure.
because you changed
Exactly.
the rules of the game. Now I'm
Exactly.
getting
That's
something
not
different
fair.
than
Yeah.
you. There's
Correct.
not a
I never
equal
thought of that way.
reciprocity.
I never made that connection.
So reciprocity is a fundamental beginning to what is right, what is fair. But fairness for me, and justice are different.
No, I agree with that. But for a child, maybe not. Right. So
Right, it isn't.
Right.
And justice itself is a value, right? You
Yes,
believe that things
that's
should
exactly
be fair
right.
or
Yeah,
just,
yeah,
or I
yeah.
don't think that in certain
Or
cases
let's
things should be fair. or
see,
just.
justice is a larger concept than fairness.
Sure, yeah.
So that's important, and we can talk about that a little bit further if you want.
I think that's a future podcast where
Yeah.
we talk about
Yeah.
justice as a whole topic. right?
Oh, it is. It is,
Huge
because
research topic.
it
Different
is.
types of justice.
Yes, exactly right. You got it right on the button.
So we're already coming over 20 minutes here, so I think maybe we're going to have to make this a two-part podcast. So why don't we'll break here, and we'll pick back up with values again in our next week's podcast, and we'll keep going.
Do you know why the muddy rat crossed the road twice?
Get the button ready.
You want crickets or
Why the muddy rat
Cross the road
crossed
twice.
the road twice?
why did the money rat cross the road twice?
Because
Dre?
he wanted to be a dirty double crosser.
Dirty double cross.
What kind of values would a rat
Hey,
have that he wanted to
come
be the
on.
dirty double crosser?
Oh boy, no more talking about values. But they didn't get nothing. I want
He did
nothing.
not.
He just I mean, the cricket's all right.
That's good stuff.
Goodbye, folks. Don't leave me with these guys.
Congrats! You made it to the end of the episode. Thanks for tuning in. We genuinely hope that you found value in our conversation. If you liked it, please click that like button below and subscribe so that you can stay up to date on our current episodes. And if you didn't like it, you can click the dislike button, but make sure you click it twice. We're eager to hear from you, whether it's your thoughts, questions, topic ideas, or if you're interested in our leadership training and consulting support. Leave us a comment below or reach out to us directly at info@intrinsicfirst.com. We're open to any and all feedback. Thanks again for joining us. We look forward to having you back for more insightful leadership discussion. Until next time.